Well, we did have disc golf this past weekend. The All-Star event went down. The results from that, we had Team Katrina taking down Team Page 7-6 points-wise. Then we had Team Calvin taking down Eagle, also 7-6. In singles, Katrina Allen had the hot round at 7 under par, and Calvin Heimberg had the hot round at 13 under par. So the respective captains took down the singles, although the overall score didn't matter. It was just the head-to-head between the players. So in case, just a brief summary of what the format was, they split into 2 different teams, Calvin and Eagle, and then Katrina and Paige. They drafted their teams. They assigned them to 3 different skills competition of putting, distance, accuracy. The skills competitions, if you won, you awarded a point for your team. Then you played doubles head-to-head against a matchup. If the doubles team that won, again, awarded a point to their team. And then the same thing on singles. You were head-to-head stroke play matchup. If you won your head-to-head matchup, you also awarded your point to your team. So, starting with skills competition.
The format was pretty good, honestly. Yeah. The way it played out, it ended up playing
It ended up being entertaining.
Pretty well.
Yeah, so the skills competitions were okay. They happened on Friday. It was the scheduling of them, I think, could have been a little bit better because you had FPO go off at 3, and then you had MPO at 6, and there was this awkward hour in between. And also having only FPO go at once for the skills competition and then MPO only go at once left some weird downtime where I think I'm all for separate streams for the actual rounds because we'll talk about that in a second, how much I really enjoyed watching the rounds this weekend. But for the skills competition, I think flow-wise and pacing-wise, it would have worked a lot better if they were all together because you could have had the FPO distance, and then while FPO is walking up to the skills, the MPO distance can go on, and then you go straight into the FPO skills, and then straight to the MPO skills, and it would have not as much downtime in between. I think that was the biggest thing was that I personally noticed is the actual event and what they had them do was entertaining. The line hitting, the distance, and the putting. They had 3 good skills competition, and the format of them were pretty good. I saw some people complaining about the accuracy needed in the distance comp, but that's the usual.
Yeah,
that's pretty much always how it is. It was a little tighter than normal, but I've never seen a distance competition where there wasn't some type of you got to land within these boundaries type thing.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean the formats themselves, there wasn't really much to complain about. The one thing that I noticed was I think part of why it wasn't as entertaining as it could have been was I felt like one step removed from the event.
Yeah.
I think this is mainly because the commentators were in a booth in Oregon and not on the ground in Arizona. During the rounds, we've talked about that before, during the actual Pro Tour season. But you don't really notice it too much during an actual round going on because during a round, even if the commentators could get extra insight if they're on the ground, but they're not walking with the card, holding a mic, yada, 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 they'd be removed from the action anyways. This, an all-star event, for the skills contest, you almost want the commentators who are talking about it to be right there because then it would have better captured the energy that was going on.
Yeah, those skills events are all about atmosphere because, like you said, it can get the pacing for those can be tough, and I think they made it even tougher not layering them in and separating it out. But yeah, having them down there, you can feel the energy more. It's funny because around the same time as this All-Star was going on, they had the waste management on the PGA Tour, and I've been seeing all these clips of the loudest hole in golf, the hole 16, which for starters, I think disc golf needs to make one of those somewhere.
Probably hole 8 at Maple Hill is the closest thing we got.
Right, but we need somewhere where we can build grandstands and stuff to where it's make it the loudest hole in disc golf. But a lot of the effect of that is they have people there, so when they cut, even when you hear the commentators talking over things that are happening, you hear the noise in the background.
Well, some of that's just audio mixing.
Well, right, but that's what I'm saying. That's something that we didn't get. When I noticed that with the shot with James Conrad last year is you hear the crowd noise and then it cuts to the studio and it's just that's all gone and you hear voices. I think disc golf production needs to do a better job of incorporating. Even if the commentators can't be there, you have to let the atmosphere leak into it just enough. Not they have to yell over it.
Yeah.
But to where you don't feel like you're cutting away.
Yeah.
Every time they have to talk. But I agree. The format for the All-Star skills competition was good. I think it's really tough to do those types of events. Even I've mentioned last week, I think in other pro sports, sometimes it can be hard to get the pros invested into that stuff and make it entertaining. Some of the events speak for themselves. The distance would be probably the disc golf equivalent, where others you kind of just have to hype it up and make it just look really cool. But no, I would say like it was executed well. You know, it wasn't bad at all.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, all in all, it was about as good as live streaming a skills event could be. Just because the pace, like you were saying, the pace and that type of stuff, it's always going to be tough to accomplish.
Yeah.
But it did bring us some sick moments. Like we had a pretty thrilling finish in the MPO distance comp where Garrett Gerthy had to throw 680, and then he like pumped one out on his final throw, and you were just sitting there in suspense waiting. It was like 661 feet. Only 661 feet. And it was like 20 feet short, but like you're watching it fly, and then like everyone was waiting for the Bushnell guy, like who's out there to shoot it. And first off, I just fell victim to this. Can we stop saying Bushnell instead of rangefinder?
Oh, they're just calling Bushnell. They're just calling
on the
Bushnell?
Pro Tour, it's one thing because like the Bushnell sponsors, they paid so much, they might be paying them to call it a Bushnell, but like. It's leaked into my life. Where like when I pull out a rangefinder, I think of it as like, I just pull out my Bushnell real quick. Like
I haven't fallen into that trap yet.
I catch myself like we were on the golf course and like actually playing golf.
Yeah.
And my brother-in-law Kent had a rangefinder.
Yeah.
Wasn't a Bushnell brand. I was like, hey, can you hand me your Bushnell real quick? And he's like looked at me like,
that's tough,
my
man.
what? And I was like, oh my gosh.
Bushnell's getting exactly what they wanted.
Yeah,
man. You fell right into the trap.
I think of rangefinder and all I can think of is Bushnell. Anyways,
that's perfect marketing. Man. They positioned well.
So they would shoot that, and it was like waiting in suspense. And then on the FPO putting, we had Heather Young set a line that it wasn't broken until like the last 2 or 3 MPO guys went.
She is lethal.
It was thrilling. And then also on the MPO putting, Conrad had a line to beat, and then steps up to the 45 footer. It was like it seemed like it wasn't going to happen, and then just banged 5 in a row. It was thrilling. It was funny because we were watching it, and Liz, my wife, was watching it with me, and she said something about like Conrad hit one of the putts on the station before and was walking to the 45 footer. She's like, how hard is 45 feet
for
like
him?
She's like are these guys like should I expect him to like make them all or what? I'm like, no. I was like, he'll probably make like 3. I was like, but making them all from 45 feet, like that's it. Like no one will really do that. And then he just made it look so easy. She's like, that didn't look hard. I was like, gosh darn it.
I would like to know like. I'd like them to like film pros like Conrad putting from like their steppers from like that distance, and they give me the breakdown of how much distance they are able to take away from
before
the putt
like when they're actually throwing the putt
because
from.
Like Conrad gets further out there than anybody because he's so lanky.
He's probably like 40 feet.
That's what I'm saying. I want to know like what pros take the most distance away from a step putt compared to others.
Yeah,
because he like it looks like he's just handing the disc to the basket from like circle's edge.
Yeah, then I think he needed to hit the bonus putt for him to like win the point for his team, and he wasn't able to do it. But then we moved over to doubles on Saturday, and on the FPO side there was a little bit of rust that was pretty evident. It was on mainly, to be honest with you, some of the women who had switched bags this offseason.
Rust or nerves?
Probably a combination of both, to be honest with you. But some of it was weird because like one of the things I noticed was Katrina Allen on Saturday seemed like she just didn't know what some of her discs were going to do. Because she would release it, and you'd be able to like audibly hear her be like, that thing shouldn't flip that much, is what she would say.
That's not what you want. That's not what you want as DJ.
Well, that's what I was watching on Saturday, and I was thinking like, oh boy, this is a tough look, because she just seemed like frustrated. She seemed out of it. But then on Sunday, she comes out, and like I already said, she had the hot round.
Yeah.
So she turned around. Like on Sunday, she was throwing some incredible shots with her. I don't even know what they were. I'd assume it was a hurricane. I know I saw a squall in her bag, stuff like that. She was throwing some incredible shots with the DGA stuff.
There's plenty of DGA molds that do the job.
Yeah. But then Haley King surprisingly didn't seem that comfortable. I thought like Haley King was basically going to be coming back home to Innova, and I thought she'd be able to like just step right in. But a lot of times they cut to her, and something just seemed off. And then Kona was struggling out there as well, which I think Kona, part of it in my head thinks it is a lot of nerves, because
she's got the big contract.
Exactly. Yeah. She's got a lot more to live up to, because Haley King, she switched contracts, but we don't know her numbers. We don't know. And same thing with Katrina Allen. Like Kat, she basically just needs to perform to her level. Kona has to get better.
That is something to consider when you talk about the contract numbers being public, is the pressure it's going to put on the player that you're giving that contract, because now they know that people are looking at them like that kind of athlete.
Well, if you look at like Ricky and Paul, right, or even Chris and Tatar, who those are the ones that we've talked about their contracts being public and stuff, they're all like, they just need to perform to the level they're currently at. You know what I mean? They're like Paul and Ricky, top of the
Kona
game.
probably feels like
Kristen,
she needs to elevate.
Yeah, Kona got this big contract being 9th ranked in the world.
Right.
And she's feeling like, hey, I need to be in the top like 3 or 4, which that's a big... And on FPO, the top 4 or 5 women...
It's going to be a dogfight this year.
Yeah, the top 4 or 5 women are almost in their own division above. Like, there's people in the, like Haley King, Missy Gannon, Kona... Owen Scoggins, Rebecca Cox. There's players who can pump into that echelon, that top echelon, but there's those 5 of Katrina Allen, Hannah Blomroos, Kristen Tatar, Evelina Salonen, and Paige Pierce.
It's gonna be hard to crack that.
Those 5, it's hard to imagine a tournament where all 5 of them are at and one of them doesn't win.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And so when you're Kona and you're currently sitting in 9th place and publicly you're making more than all but one of them, it probably puts pressure on of like, I need to get into that top 5. And when you're not,
the more I hear that top 5, the more it makes me want to make a crazy bet like I did last year with the Paul thing. And the Paul one was like astronomical. Sure.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like there would be like, what kind of odds are you giving me if I say to you, nobody wins except for those 5?
At tournaments they're all
I think I already made that take. Was that my crazy take? I think I did. I think, yeah, that was my take. It was at a tournament that all 5 of them are at. Nobody else beats them.
I mean, I think those are pretty low odds because I think that's like going to happen.
Do you think it's going to happen too?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Someone called into debate night and they had a hot take that said
the question is how many
was only going to win 1. Or they just said Paige wasn't going to win or only win 1 tournament this year that all 5 of them are at. Oh. That was a tougher take.
Yeah, it's interesting to think like is it going to be one of the FPO players that kind of like has the dominant season and everybody else is kind of just, or is it just going to be like a rotation?
I don't know. I hope it's a rotation, but
yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see.
I can't wait.
On the MPO side, I mean, they kind of all came out firing. There wasn't much signs of rust or nerves. They all seemed loose, seemed on fire. The entire field shot 14 under except for Nico and Gannon. They shot 13 under. So like they were all just right there. Yeah, they were all just right there. One thing that was interesting was Kyle Klein and Adam Hammonds were paired up as doubles partners, and they had a stretch from like hole 3 to hole 16 where they didn't take a par. They had all birdies and 1 bogey. But when you would watch them, what was interesting was like they weren't on at the same time.
Yeah.
So like Adam would mess up, and then Kyle would put it close, and then Kyle would mess up, and then Adam would put it close, or then Adam would miss a putt, Kyle would hit the putt.
They should invite us out there next year to be like the control group. Like we'll play the course first double so they understand what like normal average golfers do, and then just watch them all go out there and shred it. Just ace 500
for the
holes.
MPO. It wasn't that long of a course. I think forget how long it was. I think it was like 8,000 feet or something like that. For a golf course, it's not that.
I guess if I'm doing an all-star event, I don't know.
You kind of want it to be shreddable.
Yeah, you definitely want it to be shreddable. You want the scores to be like super low, and then I guess like having it open is probably smart too because you're gonna get to see big drives.
Yeah, well, like one of the highlights.
Roller,
I'd say one of the highlights was Ezra laid down this like probably like 680 foot roller on a par 4, and then James Conrad hit the like 60, 70 foot putt for the eagle. That was like one of the highlights of the doubles round. On the FPO side, you had like Deanne Carey had a pretty sick throw in and stuff like that. So there was a lot of like highlights that came out of the weekend, especially during the singles round, which we'll get into here. But the singles round was their first real look at the players this year. Like I said earlier, Kona and Haley still seemed to struggle a bit with their bag, but Kat got herself together. So I don't know what happened overnight between doubles and singles, but I didn't notice any of
that disc flipped like that.
Yeah, I didn't notice any of the like. Oh my word! I can't believe because she was throwing a decent line, and then you could just tell that she didn't know the disc was going to do what it did. But then in singles, that just didn't happen.
She'd been with Prodigy for a long time.
Yeah,
like that.
9 years.
That is all she knew for 9 years. Like I mean, I probably went stretches where I had, like, I don't know if I've ever thrown a consistently like the same molds for longer than like a year.
Yeah,
like it's
9 years is something.
That's a long time.
And so the FPO finish was pretty thrilling. There was a lot of back and forth. I really liked the format personally. It was confusing at times, but I think that is mainly due to one thing that we'll talk about in about 10 minutes. But on the MPO side, it was a truly thrilling finish because first off, you have Nico and Matteo going back and forth. Matteo's up 3. And then out of nowhere, Nico hits a 530-foot ace.
That was insane.
And Matteo takes a 4 on the same hole. So now, one hole later, that 3-stroke lead gone. They're tied. Next hole, Nico birdies, Matteo pars. So now Nico's up 1, and then he was able to ride that all the way in to gain his team a point. So now, coming down the stretch, you had Calvin and Eagle head-to-head. Essentially, I believe Adam and... it might have been Adam and Kyle were the other two matchup. But Adam and whoever his matchup were basically irrelevant at 18. Like, it was something crazy needed to happen, and it did happen because Adam threw OB twice and he was blowing up. Maybe it was Kevin Jones. So whoever it was that Adam was going against, that off the second shot, you already knew, okay, they're getting a point there. So basically, Eagle and Calvin, whoever won hole 18, Eagle was down by 1. If Eagle got a 2-stroke swing on Calvin, Eagles team won. Mm-hmm. If Calvin held him off, Calvin's team won. If they tied, they were both going to get a half point. The whole All-Star event would have been tied, and then Calvin and Eagle would have went into a head-to-head playoff.
That would have been sick.
For the All-Star event title. So they both throw their drive on 18, and then both throw their second shot. Eagle's drive was a little shorter. Eagle pulled his second shot. He threw about as good as he could have. It was 120, 130 feet, but under this tree. Yeah. So you're watching it, and you deep down know, okay, it's done. Calvin put it to 28 feet or so uphill. Not an easy putt, but again, Eagle had to make his for 3. So Eagle steps up, and then they show the behind camera, and there's branches hanging down that are covering half the basket, and then there's this little hole up to the right.
He had nothing.
And so you're looking at it, you're like,
uphill,
yeah, you're like, oh, even if he were to throw it in somehow, he needed to, there's no line here. Yeah. I was expecting a low spinner, nose up, and then he starts aiming at the upper right gap. I was literally in my head okay, well, I know he's running it, but that's such a stupid run. There's no way it goes in. And then he threw it, and the thing's just floating through the air. And then halfway there, he fist pumps and starts running. And I was like, what is he doing? And then sure enough, dead center.
It's a knifing hyzer putt.
Yeah, it
something
was
you never see.
It was insane. It was so sick. And so then now Calvin has a 28-footer with pressure on him, because if Calvin misses that, A, there's a rollaway potential that he could lose the whole thing.
Yeah.
B, if he misses it and stays close, they're going to a playoff.
It reminded me, that was just like the putt he had. Was it at Worlds or was it Idlewild? I think it might have been Idlewild. There was a putt where he had he was from a knee, low ceiling.
That was
headwind.
Calvin, right?
No,
at Idlewild?
No, I think it was.
No, it was Calvin at Jonesboro's the putt I'm thinking of.
The one where it was the low
Eagle
ceiling.
at Idlewild.
Yeah, so he was low ceiling, under on a knee, up a hill into a headwind, and just somehow spun it in there.
He has so much spin.
Yeah, Eagle is never out of it.
Yeah,
he always has some kind of run.
So he hit that, and then Calvin steps up. Not a care in the world because he's a robot.
Yeah.
And just dead center. I was hoping he missed it just for
Calvin. I think Calvin is going to have a little bit of a chip this year, because I think he underperformed a little bit last year. So obviously he had the hot round. So good signs for him. Although it's funny, if we think about the All-Star event last year, it was Paul and Kona
that won it.
So what does that tell us? That tells us that Calvin is going to win USDGC.
Well, I do think that I do think this is a better this is a better showing. The course was more similar to Las Vegas than last year's All-Star event. So
right, a little more of a preview.
It was a little bit more of a preview, but again, not really.
The wind wasn't crazy though.
No, wind wasn't crazy. And one other storyline that came out of it is, first off, Connor, we owe you an apology, because Eagle did end up doing putting. His injured shoulder was a bigger deal than we thought.
I got a lot of DMs about that.
I'm going to give you a half an apology. No, I'm going to give you a full apology. Well, because as long as everybody understands why we said that, had we known he was injured,
we did know he was injured.
No,
we just forgot. We didn't.
Had
think
we remembered he was injured, we never would have made fun of Connor.
Yeah, no, I just thought...
I don't blame you guys. If he wasn't injured, it was a silly pick.
I knew he was injured. I thought he was back to 100%. This weekend, he wasn't throwing sidearms. From what I understood from the commentary, it sounds like he can throw sidearms. He just didn't want to risk it yet, and maybe a little bit later in the season, he'll start throwing more.
He seemed pretty capable, so...
But, yeah, his backhand was normal. He was ripping shots all over the place. And then, shockingly, I didn't expect this. He steps up to a 360-foot par 3 and just throws lefty and put it to 28 feet.
I love that.
He put it at 28 feet and hit the putt for the birdie, and then his upshot on one of the par 4s, he threw lefty again.
That
was one of my parlays.
I still wonder, that was a trend back in the day. There were a lot of players before the forehand throw got super popular, there was a lot of guys who thought that like being able to learn how to throw lefty hyzers was going to be like a big advantage. And there were a lot of players who had it and like used it. Nico was a big one.
Nico used it at hole 3 USDGC.
He threw it at Memorial. Like there were a lot of guys that were learning that, and then people realized like, why would you do that? Just throw a forehand. You can look at the target. It's great.
Yeah.
But I wonder if like there will ever be a player who will, because like there are guys who have made it to Major League Baseball, like the big leagues, never like with a ton of relevance, but there are guys who are able to get there pitching with both arms. It's like, that tells me that like there is like I've seen ambidextrous disc golfers that are like pretty good with both arms. Like I wonder if that'll happen someday where we'll get somebody who like is very good with both arms and just like shreds.
I was disappointed. I was disappointed that Eagle didn't hit the putt with his left hand. So gotta take a style point off for that. He did putt with his right hand.
I feel like the footwork would be like half the battle, like the lower body sink.
Yeah, I mean,
and then like going back to your
his form looked good, lefty. It kind of looked like when Gannon Burr flipped the foot.
Yeah, Gannon Burr had me thinking he was a freak of nature for about 10 minutes there.
Yeah.
I want to see more of that in the All-Star events though, is like people trying to do crazy stuff.
I'm curious if at Vegas Eagle pulls it out, or if he was like pulling it out, it's like, hey, look at this trick I can do because it's the All-Star event.
I will say that like there are some All-Star events where they have like pro All-Star events have taken like two approaches before. Like baseball, for example, they took the approach of this used to be the rule that like the winning team in the All-Star game, like that division, like the AL or the NL, was going to get home field advantage in the World Series. Like they were like, let's make the All-Star better by putting real stakes on the line. And then other All-Star games have just like left it completely up for fun, like the NBA, for example, and then you have guys just doing ridiculous things, and like that's kind of fun. So it's like there's almost like a balance to where I think with disc golf, if you just had them out there playing for really not much of anything, like I think because they got cash bonuses, right, for winning.
Yes.
Yeah. So like if you had them out there for pretty much anything, you probably would see a lot more like crazy lines.
They should do it'd be fun to do like a cash bonus on the like trick shot of the weekend.
I just want to see I want to see them go.
You know what I mean?
I want to see them all step up to a
like,
water hole and not be worried about the result and all try to throw the skip shot.
That's what I'm saying. Is like it maybe put some type of incentive on a Simon line bonus or something like that.
Oh gosh, don't call it a Simon line bonus.
Well, I mean that's just in disc golf.
I get what you're saying though.
But
like you step
some
up
type
to
of
the
incentive to where like. Yeah, like Eagle. Yeah, I could if he's
it's like
fully
a different
normal.
kind of
he's
Mando.
like I could throw forehand here, but like I kind of want that
Sounds
trick
like
shot bonus if I park it with my leg.
Yeah, that's
maybe that's what we do. Ripped Revenge,
just Ripped Revenge
All-Stars
event.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, there we go.
I would actually love to see like very high level pros like all play Rip together.
Yeah,
we played with Paul and with Gannon, and with Brody as well. But I'd like to see like a full match of that.
That'd be pretty thrilling. Apparently, back in the day, I was talking to like the Ripped Revenge founder the other day, and apparently back in the day when like first launched alongside Innova, they had like Schwebby, Barry Schultz, Dave Wiggins, and someone else at the USDGC course.
Schwebby would hide.
They did like a Ripped Revenge event, and so people come to watch, and it was all of them at the USDGC course playing Rip.
I guarantee you, Schwebby would be dirty at Ripped Revenge.
Yeah, he's got so many weird trick shots.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I do like a trick shot bonus next year. If you're listening, Pro
trick
Tour.
shot bonus. I like you step up to a hole and it's very clear like this, if you attempt this kind of shot on this hole, whether it's a lefty or you skip one off the water or whatever, that's a bonus. Yeah, I like that.
That'd be kind of cool. One other thing that we got a little bit of a preview on was the new some of the new rules for 2022 are obviously in effect at this tournament. And one of them that caused some confusion multiple different times on MPO and FPO
the line
was the new OB rule. So essentially the change was now if you're out of bounds, if your disc goes out of bounds, instead of just a perpendicular, you have a semicircle of a meter. So if you want to take it...
So you could get closer to the basket.
Well, you could always get closer to the basket if the line is faced right.
Oh, right.
But now it's a semicircle, so
now.
You don't... Right before it had to be perpendicular, no matter what. So you can't go farther than a meter away, but basically you can take that meter in any direction if your disc is OB. So everyone understood that rule. What's confusing is if your disc is an OB, but you're close to the OB line, you only get a meter perpendicular. So it's two different rules. So it differentiates. If your disc is OB, you get a semicircle meter. If your disc isn't OB, you take it last. So this is the PDGA's explanation. It says, this change gives the player more flexibility after going out of bounds. This change is especially important where multiple out-of-bounds lines intersect, such as like corners and stuff like that, or where obstacles prevent the player from taking a legal stance, maybe within 1 meter of the out-of-bounds area. It prevents excess relief in the cases of intersecting OB lines at acute angles or in tight space, and it also prevents a player who lands inbounds from having to abandon the throw if no legal stance can be taken along a perpendicular 1 meter line. This change also treats discs that are OB and nearly OB differently. Now, the only part that doesn't make sense in there is prevents a player who lands inbounds from having to abandon the throw if no legal stance can be taken along a perpendicular 1 meter line. So what does that mean?
I don't know, dude.
Because then the next line says it treats discs that are OB and nearly OB differently.
When I can walk up to the basket now and wedge it in the side of the cage and that counts, I lost a little bit of hope in the rules.
Yeah.
That just is absurd to me.
But we did see several times where
the semicircle thing makes sense.
I think the only thing that gets confusing is like I'm an inch shy of OB. It's now treated differently than I'm all the way in OB.
Yeah,
like that's the only thing that might get a little confusing for
players.
Well,
and it's crazy too because it's like if you actually do go all the way out of bounds, it's a little reward.
But you get
a stroke penalty as well. But
yeah, interesting. But yeah, I mean, we did see that cause some confusion for players out there. You know why it caused confusion. It seemed like the players just didn't understand the rule. Yeah. But like,
honestly, that's not like you've now explained that to me. I would not have problem executing that because it's very black and white. It's like. Out of bounds, semicircle. Not out of bounds, straight line.
I do think that like this weekend made it black and white. Let me find the technical PDGA out of bounds rule because I'm pretty sure in the rule book it doesn't directly correlate that.
If they're trying to if the semicircle rule though is trying to avoid certain conflictions with OB lines and obstacles, somebody an inch from OB is going to have those same conflictions. Having to take the
so basically the new rule just
says
says
you don't really solve any problem.
A lie designated by a marker disc placed on the playing surface up to 1 meter away from the point where the disc was last in bounds. So that's where it's like you can go 1 meter in any direction now. But I think what you'd have to go is casual relief, or it's somewhere in relief area maybe. I want to read what they said.
I guess it's easier if to use
because it doesn't really say anything about like a disc getting close to OB.
Because if you're using a semicircle and you can use the OB line as the cap of the circle, nobody can exploit the circle because you have a line to mark the circle, right? But if you're off of the OB, somebody could technically get a little bit ahead
here it is.
Of the circle, and it could break that.
Yeah, so it is pretty black and white. So if the position of the thrown disc is inbounds and within 1 meter of an out-of-bounds line, the lie may be relocated to a new lie at any point on a 1 meter line that extends perpendicularly from the point on the out-of-bounds line and passes through the thrown discs. Alternatively, when the thrown disc is within 1 meter of a corner, the lie may be relocated on a 1 meter line that extends from that corner through the thrown disc. So yeah, so basically... I don't know why there was confusion, but there was. I think it's just players didn't fully understand the rule.
Yeah, it's probably more players being like, why is this a rule?
Yeah, but that's... The only thing I didn't like about it is like that's the type of stuff that should have been... This came out December 1st, that this was a proposed rule. You had 2.5 months to ask why is the rule this way.
I feel like the rule...
Or at least learn it. Like it's your job to know that.
Yeah, the new rules aren't necessarily broadcasted super efficiently.
I just posted everywhere.
They're posted.
What was very funny to me...
But you have to kind of seek them out.
What was very funny to me is one of the people who didn't understand the new rule that was like arguing of like, I don't understand this, was Sarah Hokum. And she is the player, like on the PGA's website, her and I believe it's Brian Earhart are the ones who are hosting this like video series going over the rules for the players of like,
that's funny.
I forget what it's called, like Rule School or something like that. And she's like a co-host of it. And then she's sitting there, she's like, so because I'm not OB, I don't get the semicircle, but if I was OB, I would.
I do agree though. Funny. It's a little bit hypocritical when they're like, we're gonna give you the semicircle to avoid these things, but if you're an inch from OB, you don't get it, and you're not gonna be able to avoid those things. So
I guess it's because it'd be weird if like I'm an inch from OB, now I have to deter, or like maybe realistically, it's more like if I'm 3 feet from OB. It's
definitely because the line helps draw the circle.
That's what I'm saying. Because if I'm 3 feet from OB, I have to go perpendicular there, and then because what would end up happening is if Connor or like the camera is the basket, so it's straight ahead of me, and you're the OB to my left. And my disc is now within 3 feet of you, the OB line. Every player now is taking relief forward,
right?
For no reason,
right?
Versus like if it's a penalty and I'm OB, I had a penalty stroke, so I still got a penalty stroke. Right. So I think that's why they had to do it, because you basically just be able to abuse that rule.
I'm taking that circle
to move it
Go
closer.
ahead and call me. I dare you.
Yeah,
just call me.